Howdy, everybody. Welcome on into the cargo bay, where we have a very special edition of Hobby Talk, BC.
Oh, did you say hobby talk?
I did, I said.
Hobby Talk.
I love it. Yes, we do have a very special edition of Hobby Talk with a very special guest. We have Greg McLaughlin, the Star Wars podfather in terms of trading cards. I'd have to say.
I was wondering where you're going with that.
Yeah, and I was too midway through the sentence, as is often the case. If anyone's ever tuned in, you just kind of start and see where the sentence ends. But yeah, it's great to have you here. Been listening to your show for a while now. Did want to reach out.
I'm really sorry.
No, don't you dare! No, I want to reach out and see if we could get you on. So very much appreciate you accepting the invitation. Want to talk some Star Wars with you, if that's cool.
Sure, I'd love to. It just depends on how much time you guys have. I am also on have it on good authority. I am a cure for insomnia. So hey, if folks are having trouble sleeping, throw this on. My parts only, and then you'll get to bed right away.
I think what that is just an endorsement of you have a nice sounding voice, not screeching, grating hobby talk voices. BC and I do. If you're looking for, we often on the cargo bay say, if you're looking for a better source of information, there are better sources of information. And I would say the Rebel Base Card Podcast is one of the best sources of information and has been. And kind of since BC and I started talking about Star Wars cards, we said, oh, look, here's someone who has a very professional operation here. And since that point, I've basically been saying, are we going to step on any toes? No, because we're much worse.
Our quality is poor, so we're not a threat.
Yeah,
I feel like
no. And just on that, it's the same thing. It's like there was another podcast from the Star Wars trading card Facebook group, and they did the sorting tray I think they did a season of it. And it's like anything else, other podcasts. It's like the only thing we're really in competition for is there's only so much someone can listen or watch. But platform, it's just sort of as long as you're creating content, there's always going to be a demand for it. And I think what you guys are doing is so important because it's I found if I'm doing a show where if I'm I branch off and we do these other, these other ones where we talk about Disney Plus shows. And I found it hard to kind of do both at the same time. Or maybe, there's lulls where it's there's not always new stuff coming out. If it was, we'd all be more broke than we are. But it's if someone's just going, hey, look, go where if people are I'm more in YouTube or I'm more in this, then go, that's an audience that gets fulfilled by you guys. And I was kind of been watching some of the stuff, and I just like it because I'm man, I wish, I bring people on, I interview stuff, but I'm man, if there was somebody week after week, I could sit there and just talk to him. Man, that'd be super awesome.
You've got the skill.
Because it's fun to talk about cars.
Split your audio into 2 channels and give yourself a self-interview. That'd be pretty good.
Yeah, really.
I'd listen.
Ooh. No, that would be even worse. That would be even worse.
Well, I think we wanted to start with kind of just your history with Star Wars in general. Was it something that swept you away, when you were introduced to it? Kind of just what's your history?
I'm old enough, if the Chrome Dome hasn't fooled anybody yet, that I saw it in I can't say I saw it in the theater. I saw it in its original run because my dad had seen it. I was about 7 or 8 years old and decided to take us, the kids and the family. And that was the first and for the longest time, the only drive-in movie I ever saw. Oh, so wow. This is probably a couple months in. This is probably the summer, maybe June, July, but the cards were definitely already in stores. The comics had already been out for a time, but yeah, I got to see it on a very large screen, and I'd had Christmases and toys and all that kind of stuff, and all that stuff came to a close, and it was all Star Wars all the time. Right after that, obviously we didn't get the toys until '78, but I had a lot of them. Still, somewhere in here. I got to find them. But yeah, the core things, the cards, man, the comics, because at that time they, Marvel got the license to do the comics, and they had done the movies, they'd done the first 3 or 6 books, and then they repackaged them in bundles of 3, and that's where I kind of come in. So I was not on the ground floor, but I was right there, and I remember still seeing like packs of the blue, the first series, in our local pharmacy. Like I come from like a one intersection town, one light town, but we had a little pharmacy that had a newsstand that sold, Topps cards and things like that. And I was just like, man, I am all in. And that was the only thing you can get your hands on, man. There was like, maybe the odd magazine, but I'm 7 or 8. I'm like, and that's where it was. And then talking to the kids at school, I just recently went home. I'm originally from Ohio. I live now in Chicagoland, but I went home. I actually got to meet a good friend of mine I went to school with. We started in kindergarten together. And then he was a big Star Wars fan. There was another guy in town, and between the 3 of us, they had more toys than I had. But I'm like, we all had to go to the same place to get cards. We all went to the same place to get comics, and it was like great because here's a guy that's my age. I played Little League with him, right? His dad was my coach, and we enjoyed Star Wars from the ground up. Awesome. and that was fun, and it was funny because, and we talked about it recently. I was recording a bunch of audio for the 40th of Return of the Jedi, and it was like, some people were older or younger, but I'm like, I started off, in the single digits, and then by the time it was done, I was in high school, junior high and high school. I was a different person. And so it was kind of like done, right? Like I wasn't as energetic in getting, toys and things like that because I was, teenager. I got other things going on, other interests, and, even D&D and things like that. All that kind of stuff was going on, and everything's fighting for. So it's like, it just kind of had passed. I enjoyed it. I kept everything, but it's like, it wasn't until years later when the special editions, right? I wasn't the big reader that some of my friends are and got into the Heir to the Empire and all that. I'm trying to reread that now, or read it for the first time now. But it's like, Star Wars was this thing, and it was there, and it was great, but it wasn't like alive like it is now, where there's all this stuff going on, new content, books, comics, TV shows, maybe a movie. But, now it's just so much more alive, and it's just this living, breathing thing where it was like, here was a moment in time, it was there, and we moved on. And I can say now it's so much nicer to have that, because now we have podcasts, we have, YouTube streams and Discord channels and all this stuff that is helping people just connect and enjoy together. It's I don't even know what your question was originally, but you get me started, and I'm like,
you answered it perfectly. Yeah,
you answered it.
There was an answer somewhere
more.
And more.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, a point that you made, that whenever those original cards were out and the comics, that in terms of what was out there wasn't much. And I mean, Adam and I grew up in a world where it's like, once we got into Star Wars, it was like, here's all of the Star Wars stuff that, if you're into toys or if you're into collectibles, that you can get your hands on. It's just interesting to me to think about the early days when it was, a still image with that blue star field, and what your imagination could do of, going back and thinking about that scene from the movie, or, reenacting it as a kid. It's just kind of a completely different landscape that I think that we grew up in, where it's just interesting to me how little there was and how far it's come since then. Sort of like you were talking about now. Just it's a mega mass media conglomerate that it's always tangible for us now, where back then it was, you had to find it where you could get it.
Yeah, that was. Sorry, go ahead, Greg.
Oh no, I was just going to say, and Dungeons and Dragons was a very similar trajectory where you couldn't find it in stores. It dribbled out. You'd find it here or there, and maybe a friend had a book or something like that. But at the time, there just wasn't those outlets. I mean, there was the odd store if you were in a really big city, as far as like cards and things like that, or maybe if you were lucky, you had a comic store, but definitely not in my neck of the woods until much later into the game. And so, the things that you have access to today, I mean, I get excited in a Five Below or Ollie's where it's like, dude, there's Star Wars stuff here, man. And I don't care whether it's a coloring book or that like that, but I'm like, back then it's like, I can't believe how much I depended upon a little 5 and dime store that just happened to have. And if they had it, great. If they didn't, if you missed that, if they didn't get that issue in, or somebody else bought it in town, sorry, kid, you never got it unless, so yeah, to have those things, and then there weren't that many of them. 66 cards, and each of those sets, a sticker that I never kept any of the stickers. I used them all. Awesome. The gum ate the gum.
I had some of that just recently.
Yeah, I just cringed. Stop doing that on behalf of 50-somethings anyway. It's just horrible.
Adam is a bit of a daredevil when it comes to the gum.
Yeah.
I don't think you can even call it gum now.
It's that last piece I had. It was still a little gummy. It's usually dust more than it is gum. But
that's horrible.
Yeah, the insinuation is, of course, that he's had multiple pieces of very old gum and can give you various flavor profiles at this point, which is impressive.
They used to put lead in pipes too, but I mean,
I'm trying to think, what is the name? There is a chemical in that gum that's like, we had to stop putting this in things because it is toxic, but I can't remember the name of it.
You're probably fine.
Most of the food that we had, like it's like the 70s, the 60s, 70s, 80s were like, the penultimate of like processed foods coming from like boxes or cans. And I'm like, no wonder my Generation X is really not that. I'm like, this, you know what we're eating? And I'm like, my kids now, I'm like, hey, would you like to have, I'm not going to make that ever again. I'm like, no, no hamburger helper. No, none of this stuff. 'Cause, man, it's just horrible. So much better now.
Asbestos tile underneath your feet while you have that delicious food. Yeah, that I was gonna say I grew up, in an era where Star Wars stuff was everywhere, and even at a young age, I realized this is odd. These movies came out a long time ago, and I can go to a Walmart and get an action figure from Star Wars. Like, I was very happy about that, but it was kind of wild because, there was that gap between any kind of major media, and it was just, starting with Galaxy and Timothy Zahn, which led to me being like, wait a second, I don't know how old Star Wars is, but I know it came out before I was born, and I'm going to go buy a Han Solo blaster, and go play in the backyard. So yeah, that's wild. I don't know if I would be as big of a Star Wars fan if it weren't for constant bombardment of merchandise and video games, which maybe is a good segue into kind of your collecting history, collecting things in general. What gave you the bug?
I think anything else, it's like either, I remember the cards being on the bottom shelves at this local pharmacy, which is, I'm small kid, and it's just right there. And I remember, probably it's the box, Star Wars. Oh, this has something to do with Star Wars, and it's 15 cents a pack, Mom. And to her, love my mom, and she bought this stuff for me. And you get home, and then you start to kind of figure out like, oh, there's more, and there's a puzzle. And I think probably the puzzle has more to do with me really getting the bug than anything else. And it's something I really, really wish that they would get back to, is the base puzzle.
Yeah.
Because I think it makes, I'll get off my soapbox here in a second, but it makes the base set worth chasing. But B, it's like I sat there and looked at incomplete puzzles for, I can't tell you how many times. And you look and you're like, you're putting this together. I'm like, man, I'm almost there. And and then, I think once because the cards start around June of 77, and they go all the way into like 78 with the Orange Series 5, because it's just like they keep buying this stuff, which is also kind of interesting. The two sets are usually the more expensive to build are the blues and the oranges, whereas the in-betweens are usually pretty easy to find. But I remember like then it's like all of a sudden baseball and football cards become, oh, okay, same company. Oh, this is kind of the deal. And I start, because that's about the time you start kind of realizing, oh, there's this stuff on TV, and oh, they're cards. And so I think in between, the three original films, I'm picking up baseball, more baseball than football. And then of course, around 80 when Topps lost their monopoly on baseball, and so Fleer and Donruss, and some of the other card companies started making their own baseball, and some of those early sets are pretty brutal. But I remember getting those, and so I ended up having to shed, because it's like 2 or 3 years in, I'm like, I don't need that 78 MLB, whatever I got, I just toss them. And I'm like, no. But yeah, I think I collected pretty solidly the Empire sets. I don't think I finished. I think I had more of Series 1 Empire than the other two. Because I mean, by that time, like those, if you've ever seen the hanger packs for Empire and Jedi, where they have those, they're like 45 cards. There's like the little cello ones. I remember seeing those in stores and getting them. And then Jedi, which like whenever I release this dumb program, that we go really heavy detail about that. I remember even seeing those in movie theaters as we finished Jedi, and they'd have boxes there you could buy packs from. Same thing else. I think they had hanger boxes and stuff. And then after that, it was like, baseball for a while. And then comics really came to me in about the mid 80s. And I remember trading a bunch of my baseball away for credit for comics. Because at that point, The Dark Knight had just finished. I actually have a couple of them signed. I was at a con taken by a friend of mine. Frank Miller was there and signed. You would never be able to tell it's Frank Miller, but I had him sign a couple of the, issues 3 and 4, and the last Daredevil at that time for Miller. Dick Giordano was still alive with DC and whatnot. So, it's like after I kind of got that, I always kind of gravitate back to baseball, played baseball for a little bit. And when I was a kid, and I remember like, I still have a lot of my early like junk wax at that point. It's just like, I think by that time, a store I was going to the game would have different card sets. I remember seeing some of the early Marvels, the early 90 Marvel ones. But I would still buy. And then I think fantasy baseball really started kind of kicking in. So I was buying baseball, and you just kind of kept them. But then I left the States. I got a job overseas, and there wasn't really much to collect. And so a lot of that kind of stayed in amber in my parents, like a lot of folks, it stays in your parents' house until they're like, please get it out. And then when I went back, it's, I think, I didn't collect for a long time. I did not I remember seeing, the sequel or the prequel trilogy cards in Wide Vision going, I don't like these. What? This is not the size of a Star Wars card. I have them all now. Now I remember seeing them on on store shelves. You go to Target, whatnot, going, it's the wrong size. And then, go back. And when I got back in, I think it was because I was thinking about this because when the Phantom Menace, when the Force Awakens came out, I'm there. The Journey to the Force Awakens cards, especially ones they would show you, and they're like, "Hey, this has the Starfield. They look like old cards. Yeah. I'm in." And boy, that hooked me back. So really starting in 2015, it started with the Target runs and seeing those, and then all of a sudden, I'm buying tons of cards and starting to go, and that's when I start really kind of thinking about, hey, I should blog about this, or I should do something. Because I can't talk about the one thing. I worked for worked for Apple for a while, and I couldn't talk about technology in a podcast or blog or anything like that. But I could sure as heck talk about cards, and so that kind of leads into what I've been doing, for the last almost 5 years.
And that's awesome. Definitely beat me to the collecting punch with that. I remember I've said this before, but I remember looking at season 1 Mandalorian cards on the shelves and being like, "What? They're making Star Wars cards again? Like, who's gonna buy these? Who do they think's gonna buy these things at $20 a box? Are they crazy?"
Wait a year and you'll see who just is buying that stuff.
It was me buying them for $60 a box a few years later. Or a year
old guys
later.
In the parking lot that are beating each other up for blaster boxes.
Yeah.
Get the popcorn, kids. We'll show you how not to act good in public.
Yeah. You love to see that. Yeah, it's funny because that is that time period when those sorts of stories were pretty prominent of like people are being debaucherous at Targets is kind of when Adam and I started, talking about Star Wars trading cards and trading cards in general. Because I had happened to be at a Target and saw a blaster box of the Skywalker saga. And I was like, hey, let's go on your Twitch and we'll open some cards and talk about this. Like, I had never opened a pack of Star Wars cards, I don't think, ever before that. I'd have been like a big baseball, football, basketball card collector when I was a kid. I was like, hey, we have been talking about Star Wars. Like, let's open these up and see what we find. And like, I had a green Han Solo out of 99 in my first pack, and I was like, I'm in. This is great. This is cool. And it's been a lot of what we've been doing since that time, which is Kind of interesting.
That was a great set to start with too. Skywalker Saga was very good to me. A lot of great autos from that set, including my Hayden, which I just had.
Nice.
I just had CGC great at. They were at the National, and
nice.
they had a submission table there. But yeah, also it was just nice. Yeah, and then like pre-COVID, it was nice seeing stuff on the shelves, which I think blasters are kind of the new pack, right?
Yeah.
I was in a Target and saw like now you're seeing more Marvel. You're seeing everything back. There's a huge glut, but I'm like, there was some Loki season 1 on the shelf, and I'm like, And after watching the finale of season 2, I'm like, maybe that's
It's nice to see stuff on the shelves again. Yeah,
it is.
As that was, we started this in the middle of the hype bubble, but that was not our intention. We just weren't aware it was a thing until you happened to come across those cards. And for me, I had no idea what a numbered card was, which is really set my brain a whirling and a fiending until that point. Yeah, I'm glad to see things calming down a little bit, at least to the point where you can get some retail cards at retail prices occasionally.
Every once in a while, if you're lucky, you can. But yeah, you do see the shelves are not as picked clean by the adult men who would be standing there stocking the person who is restocking the shelves, which is, I think nice for humanity in general that's not as prominent anymore,
And I would say that time has passed because, and I talked to a lot of folks, and it's like, depending upon your Walmart or Target, your mileage can vary greatly upon who's buying it for that store or that district or whatnot. We were happening to be lucky in Chicagoland that you go pretty much a half hour in any direction, you're going to hit one of those big box stores, and some are stocked better than others. And I've seen sets that I've only seen at XYZ store or just X. Some I haven't seen at all. And it's when you have the one thing I would say is that if you were a Yu-Gi-Oh fan, you didn't worry. The whole pandemic, that was the one darn thing you could buy. It's Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! Except if it's like, okay, the TSR, there's like a new Doctor Who one. I'm like, okay, some of the specialized ones. But I'm like, yeah, if you were into Yu-Gi-Oh, man, you had clear sailing. Because the Pokemon 25th was, to me, ridiculous. Because do you know how many they're printing up? Like, I bet you can go out and still see the Halloween Pokemon cards, which I bought. Dispersed them to friends and family who had little kids, but they didn't produce a bunch last year and they were gone very quickly. This year they came in a fury, and Costco was selling the Halloween Pokemon edition, and everybody still got a ton left over. So it's interesting that some of the stuff caught up, like right during the pandemic. They couldn't print. You couldn't get the paper, you couldn't get this stuff, or you get people in there, and it became really crazy for a while. I like you. I like seeing stuff in there because on the odd chance a kid may grab something, I want him to be able to grab something. And retail should be just for retail. I'm like, it doesn't have to be like, I would love to. I've pulled an auto from a retail box. I've pulled, heck, the Star Wars 40th. I've pulled a film cell card. That was one. It's like, go look at prices for the 40th, and it's insane how it's gone up on even Blaster. I didn't even think about that, or I would have grabbed a couple and been like, but it's funny what people will find. It's just, there was the before times, there's the after. I think it's getting back to normal as far as quantity, but we're in this weird phase where Fanatics hasn't quite totally absorbed everything from Panini yet, who just recently filed a lawsuit against Fanatics. Good luck. But I don't know what they're gonna make. But I don't mind. I mind a decent amount of, and I like them for your big whales that you can do your signature series, you can do your masterwork, you can do, well, now unfortunately Galaxy. But I want something that anybody can do. Give me even a sticker book. I mean, that's what I'd love to see them do with Star Wars again. Do another sticker book. I almost grabbed the NFL, the latest NFL one from Panini is out. And it was fun because, yes, you get stickers, but you got one card in that pack. And that was a fun little chase because GameStop was selling it. Nobody was thinking to go to GameStop to get, but they had them. Marvel did one a couple years ago, and they're fun. Just give me something to kind of recreationally chase, and I don't feel like I have to wear white gloves to do it. Yes, if I've got the bread, I'll buy the big stuff. I'm a big boy, I can do that. But I just as soon have something that's fun to chase. Like I said, I'm chasing a 56 Topps Major League Baseball set, 342 cards. It's a small set. 75% of them are commons that I'm getting for $2 and $3 a piece. There are about a dozen in there that, Ted Williams, Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, that I'm not going to be able to buy. But it's fun to see what you can put together, and it's fun because it's like a singles chase, like some of these other sets. So I just want something to chase, have fun, open. If I get something great, awesome. If not, it's not gonna. I don't feel like I've missed a mortgage payment, buying a case or something, or worrying about trying to flip it right away.
Yeah,
it's for me. Most of it will stay in there. I'm smart. I'll sell some of it off and make a little money back so I can, buy.
Yeah, we tend to joke, but not really even really jokingly, that we are blaster boys at heart because we are budget boys at heart. Our level of bread is scraps sometimes. So I mean, for us, we are really discerning collectors. I think both Ab and I just oftentimes our bank account reflects how avid of collectors we are. There are like anybody else, there's up times and there's down times, and it's going into Christmas, I'm like, maybe I'll not buy some cards so I can get people Christmas presents, that sort of thing. But
you just give them your doubles, BC. That's
here. Hey guys, do you want some commons that I got doubles on? But it is interesting now because the stuff that's been coming out recently, we've been pretty down on, I'd say. I mean, in terms of like high tech, you get one pack and it's $100, or you get Chrome Black and it's probably a $5 autograph and 3 other cards, so like seeing these things from times, like, is there any way we can move away from that and innovate in this space that maybe is more inviting to collectors? I mean, we both praised Flagship and still love Flagship this year because of the price point and the entry point and like the collectability of it. But something like a sticker set would be cool. I think we're kind of like, we're just grinding the gears on high tech and Chrome Black and $300 hobby boxes. We're like, yeah, it's fun to open those things, but it is like, we have to pick, am I going to open a Galaxy or a Finest or anything at all? I think the price has gotten kind of wacky on some of that stuff. It'd be nice to see it come back down a little bit.
I might feel differently if I were rolling in money.
If I was very wealthy, I might feel differently. But yeah, as a lowly blaster boy, that's just how I feel.
Yeah.
Well, I started off like you, in getting back, and that's all I knew. I had no idea about hobby boxes and all this. And, I started back in, and, after a while, it's like you had to kind of figure out, like, well, if I get, I'm going to end up with a ton of dupes, which is great, or if I want to start that. But then it's like I got into hobby boxes, and finding in some cases, you could get a full base set from a hobby box, which is good and bad. You could get a hit, get an autograph. But then it's like, well, then my chase is kind of done. And so I can either go blaster by blaster, and it's more economical, but it leaves a lot of excess, or you can do, in some cases, I even found like going even on secondary markets, buying a lot of those 90s sets I didn't get a chance to. Some of the ones I don't go back to a lot are ones where I just got them as a base set, flip through them, and okay, done. And I'm like, but there was no chase there. And so I've kind of, I've gone through that, and then all of a sudden you went from a hobby box kind of being around $100, 120, whatnot. I remember the Galaxy, the first Galaxy Chrome. Like I pre-ordered that or got it at $120, and I was like, okay. Actually pulled a Dawn Murphy card. I'd interviewed her on the show. I was like, this is amazing. The odds of me pulling a sketch from someone I actually A knew, B had talked about even before she was, licensed by Topps. But then after that, then it became like, well, I can't get a hobby box because all of them are hard to find. They're sold out, and I'm not doing it. And, and that's something I do take exception, and not from the comment you made, but like in some of the groups or where they talk about like the lower autos, you find especially like different from Star Wars from, let's say, a player who's a bust, NBA, baseball player, whatnot. It's like we love, as Star Wars fans, we love that obscure actor in such and such. And I find some of my best interactions are with folks. Like I think I pulled the guy who did Masameda, and I forget what his name is, from this, the prequels. He had an Instagram account, and I think I tagged him when I posted that autos from Skywalker Saga. And he's, oh man, this is cool. And you're like, that's awesome. Or recently, like talk to like Christopher Sean, from Star Wars Resistance. Lovely. He interacts on the socials. And I remember we're watching Resistance one time, and my daughter drew like a one of the droids. It's a BB-2E or something like that. And I posted it, and he liked it. I'm like, dude, we just saw this guy voicing a character, and he just likes something that my daughter just drew right now. And it's those things. Or, Misty Rosas, who did Queel, right? She's the character actor for
and
Queel.
And Frog Lady, of course.
And Frog Lady. and she will, she'll interact with fans on there. And so, I want an autograph from her because that has a connection. I have a connection to that. Or Dominic Pace, who we've had on the program a few times. He did like one of the extra bounty hunters in the first season of The Mandalorian. And he was out there during COVID doing these shows and interacting with fans. I'm going, hey, I'm going to get on that train, because even though, he doesn't have any lines or things like that. I mean, they made an independent comic book of him, that, like he helped self-publish and did some of these, and eventually got on one of those tiki mugs, from, is it Beeline Creative? So those are kind of these connections that we can have, even with folks who someone goes, oh, but when you go, well, yes, it's not a big auto, but I also didn't pay $300-400 to get that.
Right.
I'm more than happy to go on eBay and pay $10 for that. And I've got a lot of those kind of autos, and that's really cool. I think I put together, here's one off topic, actually not off topic. So Oliver Ford Davies, he's the one of the guys in Padme's court, right? You must contact me. He had let's see, which was it? It was Finest, I want to say 2021 or 2022. It was around that same time, but I picked up like a high numbered one of his, and I built a rainbow of those. And I think I got all but the one of one. So I've got one that's out of 5, out of 10, 25. And that was fun rainbow chase, because I'm like, I can't afford to buy those big boxes. Right. But I could afford to chase those autos, and I got a lot of those for super cheap. And it's a nice, I got in a nice page of a binder now, and I Lord knows how much that one-of-one is, or if it's even been pulled. But that was fun, and I did that for a few of those, actors. And you go, hey, this is a fun way to take something that someone might cast away. Or they go, well, I got this, throwaway auto. But you go, well, you can have some fun with that. Or Sapphire, right? The first Sapphire, the A New Hope one, I was building parts of the back of the puzzle that would fit into a 9x. And I'm like, well, I can't afford to get all of it, but I'm going to chase these particular cards. That's going to make this sequence. So when I flip it over in a binder, I go, well, that's pretty cool. I can get part of that. I've got that 3 or 4 times over in the original sets, but it's just like when you're going back to your point, and I swear I have a point. This is why you got to really cut me off. All through the year, they release these sets, and you have to kind of make the call. And I've told people, like, you have to make the call of, like, this is what I want to chase. Maybe this is not what I want to chase. That's not for me, and that's totally cool. I don't need everything. But maybe there's something going on right now that, okay, I can't buy that box, but hey, maybe I'm going to character build that, or I like that particular card. Maybe I want to chase a rainbow of it, or just to kind of see, because I want to see what the design is. And I don't need them all. Like, I've got to fight my natural instinct to go, I want all of them. Like, no, it's okay. Get a few and go, okay, that's what I can do. And then that way, if it comes around again, maybe I'm saying, like, that is such a cool set, I want that. Or the next time high tech comes around, because it doesn't come around that often. I don't think I have, or if I did, I think I might have liquidated that, because the high tech, some of these sets that came out right before I got back in, like Galactic Files is another one that you kind of go,
huge
don't.
set.
I'm just going to say don't. Don't Galactic Files, please. It's a maddening set. It's an interesting set. It's a maddening set to chase.
Kind of to your point, I have been collecting some of those, the first series of Galactic Files, but just the EU characters, which is still a large set, but there's a focus there. I don't need everything, but I want those 90s, EU characters from Galactic Files. So yeah, that's definitely something that I do. I would say in general, I'm not a set collector. A lot of times, if I can help it, I find one card and I'm like, that's the card out of this set I'm going to try to get a few of this time around, especially if they're, it's a set with parallels. So I'll do some.
If you're patient, hunting. You can so win at this. You can so win at this hobby if you're just patient.
Well, I mean, that's the thing too, is like, buying a box, sometimes you don't always get that full set, but if you wait, people who open cases and cases and cases of them will just sell you a full set for much less than the box. And I've gone that route because, unlike Adam, I have a hard time curbing that. I need to collect the whole thing sometimes. There are sets where I can just like all in or nothing, but then there are ones where it's like, if I've started in there, it's like, well, I better go pick up all of them now that I've got some binder pages going and I want to have like my brain just fulfill each page completely.
The power of sequential numbers.
I'm telling you, man. And if only they did a 90 card set or like something that ended on that 9th slot on the card binder page. Yeah, it's why it's the 96 finest, 90 cards. It's a beautiful set. There's crazy images. The backs of the cards have wild EU information, and it ends on the 10th page with that last card slot. And when I flip it, I'm elated. It's as happy as I can be as a collector, and it's just the wildest thing that makes me so happy.
That's a great set. And, each of those especially, and some of the Galaxy sets are a great moment in time that'll show you, like, well, just even if you look at today's flagship, how heavy certain franchises were in that particular one. And yes, it was more focused on, recent series and whatnots, but there's some other ones in there. But yeah, a lot of those, pre-Disney ones, had EU characters, and you're not just going to see them. And it's fun, right? And that's, like going back in some of those, and I think a lot of those 90 sets are fairly reasonable. You can pick up, you could pick up that Galaxy. You could pick up a Galaxy 1 box sealed. It was like, I think I picked mine up for $35 a few years ago, and you get that all day long. Now it's like still close to about triple. Yeah, but that's still not bad because, look at that Galaxy. Look at that first, few Galaxy sets. What an amazing, like the whole 90s, right up through like, Shadows and Finest and Master Visions. What a, or even the, like with the Wide Visions. That's so 90s. It's such a great design. It's everything. They packed everything in there. Steven Sansweet's writing a bunch of copy for that. And they're giving you extra images and concept art. There's so much care that's going into those that you look at some of today's stuff and you look at Galaxy, the last Galaxy, you go, come on, we could do better, kids. We could do a hell of a lot better.
We could at least put the artist's name in there as a bare minimum. As just the bare minimum.
You do not have time in this broadcast for me to don't. I will.
Don't worry, we've ranted and raved about that on, I'd say, multiple episodes of Hobby Talk at this point. Just a major pain point of frustration that we have as collectors. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Tops, for giving artists the credit where it's due.
Yeah, it is always nice to pull a mystery card and have no idea where to start trying to find out anything about it.
And we've been talking about Galaxy. It's really the set that, like, once we found what that, like, because we just were organically finding Star Wars cards basically together, right? So there you go. We were just finding them randomly together, and once we opened like a loose pack of Galaxy, we're like, what is, like, just the images, the backs of the cards, like, that was the set that I think I don't want to speak completely for you, Adam, but at least for me, that, like, it blew my mind. And I know we had just a lot of fun, like, not just with the front of the card, but the backs of the card meant something too,
Yeah,
you have a credits on a card. I love that.
Yeah,
you have sections.
Yeah,
They're gonna tell you everything, and they're darn happy to do so. And
in your interview
I mean,
with
even to the point of like, like the card number, there's a little silhouette of Darth Vader in it, and that's a detail. It's like, it's, yes, I got checklists, I've got title cards. Somebody bring that back. You put me king of tops for a day, and you're like, you'll see some damn title cards and checklists back.
That's Sean Taggart saying that, his philosophy was it should be like a Betty Crocker, recipe card and just have as much information as possible. That's really, and was what blew me away as a lifelong, I would say, big Star Wars fan, deep knowledge Star Wars fan, seeing that galaxy set and being like, I've never seen this image in my life.
Yeah.
I have no idea what this is, was really exciting. So
and not just that, but I'm like, when they came out like this, and sorry about that, but the trade paperback they did, and I talked to Brendan Bernard, who is the lead graphic designer for Star Wars Card Trader. I'm like, I think he said he had one of these books, and he's like, I had no idea they were cards. I just like the artwork.
Yeah. And
I'm like, this is something like when Topps had their comics division. I'm like, yeah, and you can find this trade paperback on eBay, and I recommend getting it, because it's going to give you full color pages of the artwork that's on each one of these cards. That does more than the Abrams books, which I've talked about incessantly, going, it's a great resource. It's something you pull off. If you don't have the cards, you can see what's there. The Galaxy one is a thinner book. It doesn't have all of them, but it does give you, Gary Girani, who, worked on all those sets, as kind of like, quarterbacking that. They're really, you have the Galaxy to thank for, I think, every set that comes after, because if that's not a hit,
right,
what else are they making? What, if you think about even like Vehicles, which is like a mid, like a 95, which should have been another Galaxy, which should have been another Galaxy release, but they just kind of switched it over to Vehicles. Thank God I got that box sealed also before COVID.
Yeah.
And you're like, I ain't opening that. But I'm like, even recently, I'm like, I should get a set of that. I'm trying to do that because I had a lot of those sealed ones, and I'm like, I need to get a base set just so I can look at it and fill this binder. And so I've got some work to do because I haven't gotten all the sets yet. But those are great fun chases, and some of them will be just because they're Galaxy 6 wasn't as printed as much, and so that's going to be a more expensive chase.
Yeah.
It was an expensive sealed box before COVID. It's crazy train now, but some of these other ones I recommend going back. And then now, as you get into them, that 2018 Galaxy, I do recommend people picking up. Because the artists are notated, but the artists are still out there working. A lot of those artists are doing sketch cards and whatnot. I got a chance to talk with some of those, get those cards autographed. And so that's like a living Galaxy set that you can follow people's careers there on Instagram and whatnot. And that's been so fulfilling. And so that's why it's like, yes, we need to get new art in there. Thankfully, the images that they pulled from Star Wars Card Trader are notated if you look at the checklist on, Cardboard Connections and whatnot. And some of those people I've had a chance to talk to, Derek Laufman, Darren Pepe and whatnot. That's incredible. You've got digital art that's now going back into physical. And, you're seeing that, people can enjoy it in the app. People can enjoy it in a card. And as you can see, if you follow some of the bigger, the guys who do a lot of the breaks and whatnot, Star Wars Card Crazy, like they love art. Even some of these they're not really heavily into non-sport, but they understand a refractor. They understand how rare that is and how much valuable it's like, hey, look, they're not that interested in the shots from the movies or TV shows.
Yeah.
They are interested in parallels. They're interested in refractors. They're interested in art. So, if you got to court it, there's these sets can court us and them. There's enough there to make everybody happy, but yeah, the artists need to be given their props.
The Card Trader app is, something we talked about, we dabbled with a little bit, but one of the reasons why I'm not on there anymore is I just get so frustrated by how much great stuff is in that app that I want on a physical card. I wish that I wish there were just a massive set of all the, card trader cards physically. But sometimes I'm looking at sets on that app going, why don't they print these? Just print. Everything's here. The design is already here. Can't you just print it?
In seeing some of that, and talking to the folks from Star Wars Card Trader, it's like, one, I like it because it's a lab. It really allows you to kind of see some things you're thinking about. And when we did our we had Brandon back on for the Galaxy Part 2 and talking about creating the digital galaxy. And he was he really championed that. And that was such an important thing because now there was a new generation that if they're just in the app, they're pulling in artists. They're getting this original content. And, maybe in some, you're starting to see that because in Topps, Kick went away. But Topps Total Football is what the soccer app is. And in that app, you can have them print it and send it to you.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome. It's in some cases it's not that cheap, but it's possible. And I've dabbled in that, and there's some that I'm like, I want to see that. Maybe I'm not necessarily interested in that player, but that particular card, and there's different levels of it. And that's one of the reasons why I go into a lot of the apps, maybe some more than others more often, but they all take cues from each other, and you can kind of see what one's working on. Bunt being the oldest, that's I think a 2012. Star Wars Card Trader came along. Unfortunately, we lost Walking Dead, UFC, WWE, or there was a wrestling one that I was in for a while. But Disney and Marvel, a lot of times you'll see stuff in there that'll eventually make its way over to Star Wars Card Trader. One of the reasons why I like going in there. And at the end of the day, it's a collection you can take with you. You can always crack open a few packs, there's a community within the app. There's a community outside that, we talk about, Card Squadron and whatnot, that we can trade and go, hey, I'm looking for X, Y, and Z. And yeah, it's hard because in the beginning of those apps, and I know that there was even Card Trader podcasts, right? Card Trader Illuminati, like the Car Wars, the Card Cantina. But in the beginning, it seemed like you could get them all, or you could chase, and there was that, and then it became so that there was so much content that you couldn't, and I think that's hard. Or if Topps screwed up that particular, like they didn't do a release, like even as we're recording this, they do a weekly gilded, where it's like you collect different variants of the cards and you can meld them for this really cool wide vision card, and it's where I usually spend a lot of my attention. But even today, I was like, I don't see them. Oh, okay, now it's in since the last card they have up. But it's just kind of fun. And yes, the detractors will say, like, it's not real. They're not real cards. But it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, it scratches a lot of those itches. It's fun. They are very responsive. I see them, on social media, and they put a lot of work into it, and it's fun. And, it's one of those things where eventually we could see that, where it's like, oh, if you have X number of these, just like if you go on ePack from Upper Deck, there are some there that digital that you can pull, and you go online to do so, and some those are physical ones. You can have them sent to you through, ComC and whatnot, or send them up to ComC and sell them off. And so a lot of this stuff I think will eventually come. But now it's just a matter of like supporting those apps and keeping them going until they become whatever they are. Like, Panini has the two, like Dunk, and I forget what the NFL one is. I dabbled in those, but those will obviously change because Fanatics has them. And so, whereas like Topps had a football one, lost it, it's now in the archives. I got a feeling there'll be another iteration of the football one, but you want to keep them going. You want to keep these apps going until everything settles, because then, okay, whatever they're going to be, they're at least, they're employing people, and they still got all this stuff coming up. And once again, sorry, got to throw in the hook, man. Otherwise,
no, I'm interested because I don't think I can't see myself being on Card Trader just because I hate being on my phone. But if there was that avenue to print a card, even just occasionally,
that's super interesting.
They'd have me reeled in. Yeah,
they would want to, because we dabbled. We were doing it because you and I made like a concerted effort to be like, let's try the Card Trader app just to see what it's like. And I think we did it throughout the Kenobi run. So whenever the Kenobi series was airing, we were doing like the weekly, weekly episode collection, and then there were other I mean, I still have the app, so it's like I also have like a Masterwork set that was coming out around the same time, and
I got all the way to the first run of Galaxy from that same era, and I was collecting a parallel set of the Galaxy cards.
Because they released the Chrome Galaxy. They did that was around the same time. It just like the grind of it and the being on my phone, smashing buttons and waiting to energy up and spin the things to do the things.
I got a little too in the loop, I burned myself on the loop a little too much.
Yeah.
I was in there trying to get as much free stuff as I possibly could.
That's exactly what I was trying to do. I was like, okay, if I time it just right, I can game it for the free version and I can get cool stuff. But it was a grind at a certain point for me. I was like, I gotta walk away.
They add that print button, I'm grinding again.
Yeah. You do bring up a good point, though, and it's something that I like is that, so for example, like Chrome Black or some of these higher end sets, a lot of times they make their way into the app. And not only that, a lot of the colored parallels that are usually almost hard, very hard to pull. And so what makes it nice is that if someone was saying like, you know what, I'm not going after Masterwork. Whenever Masterwork decides to drop, it's out there. But it'll find its way in Star Wars Card Trader. And it's nice because then it goes, oh, here's a way for me to collect Masterwork. A, without breaking the bank, and B, some of those autos that like I can't get, that would be a very expensive auto to pick off the secondary market. But I'm like, okay, cool. I would say one last thing, and they haven't done this for a while. They used to, during Celebration, do live, like on-card autos. So I think they would bring over somebody. I think this especially, I think when Topps was also doing more autos when they were doing like for Celebration, and they would actually have exclusive ones where they probably had somebody like just scribble on like a screen, and that was there. And I think I had a Tim Rose and I had a Freddie Prinze. I think I have a Kanan one from Celebrations, either 2017 or 2019 or something. And that was just something cool and very unique to that, where it's like, well, yeah, I can't print it, I can't hold it, but I'm like, it's one of those that no one's coming after. It's like you have to like mark going, I'm not trading this. Don't come after this. But yeah, and just the last thing I'll say on it, because these different sports, like now that baseball's done, I may go in and simply hoard coin in bunt until I know that they're ready for bunt 2024, and that's what someone can do. Like we're right at the point where they just in Star Wars Card Trader just came out with a new base set. And so it's nice because anything you go after, a cargo drop or anything, brand new cards, but it's coming. So it's like, even if you're not like interested in, or a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go in like, all right, Disney, I'm not chasing a set at the moment, but I'm going to go grab my coin and get out. And then you have this great war chest. Like I think I've got like 1.4 million in Disney Collect. So it's like on a holiday, I can go, all right, whatever set's out there, I got all the time in the world. I got all the coins. Like I'm going to get all these cards. But I do that a lot in some of the other apps. Skate just recently, they just started up because the NHL season just kicked in. And so like, oh, I've got a nice little war chest I can go through, and it scratches that base set itch. Because even in bunt, like the series is like 300-400 cards plus for a base set, as opposed to in Card Trader where they'll break them up. There's like 100 card sets that they'll release throughout the year series, like 1, 2, or 3 or whatnot. And it's fun. Like I said, it's just how you do it. Yes, I'm not here advocating for folks to stay on their phone, but it is something where it's like, it's kind of nice. Like you're in it, you've got a little downtime going, all right. And anything to get me from like looking at an Instagram reel, like
that's where I found the real value in it. It was a replacement for being on my phone for other things. And let me be clear, when I am not on my phone, I am engaging in other forms of digital entertainment that are not any, more productive.
He's playing his Switch, let's be honest.
I'm playing the Switch. I wanted to ask, before we wrap things up, or I guess actually I think this is something BC wanted to ask, but I'm stealing it. Just kind of, about any big Grail cards that you're after, what the dream is, or anything that would just be kind of the peak of your collection. What's your biggest chase, or maybe something you have that you're most fond of?
I typically say that my favorite card is my Wonder Bread Princess Leia, because of the time. Now Topps did that set, and when it came out, my mom used to buy bread in bulk, and I remember her coming home with several loaves that had that card in it, and the cards came unprotected. They were at the back of the end of the loaf, and so a lot of discoloration. But I think I had like 6 Princess Leias, and I was like, man, that's the only card I had of that set for years until recently, until I got back in, and there was no reason, like as a base chaser, I should have kept that card. It didn't have anything on it. It was like, I'll never get any of these again. Why I have this? But somehow I kept hold of it. And it was so fun to build around that and finish that set that it's like, yeah, it's, it's a worthless card. It's stained, but I'm like, that is the cornerstone of what became a great set. I'm lucky I have it. And it makes me think of like my mom, like, wow, I remember seeing those, like these little tie-ins. And so that to me is a card that, to me is worth, there's no price I can put on that card. There are cards I will put a price on, and it's my hidden auto. And if somebody wants to come, a 05 Skywalker Saga, purple Hayden Auto, please, DM me. I'll be happy to talk to you about letting that card go. But I would say, you have several projects going on. I'm trying to finish my O-Pee-Chee run, and I have a good chunk of the vintage. I don't have all of them, but I think that's another one where I'll do the singles game for, to finish those up, and that's fun. Sometimes you almost like to leave a set maybe unfinished because it's always something you can go back to, and you have an ongoing project, and I'm seeking counseling for that, but we'll get through it. The Japanese Yamakatsu, there's another one, and I love that. I love that show you guys did on all the oddities one, and that New Zealand set, the one from the ice cream one. I was like, all right, I had no idea that existed. I'm like,
the space ice. Is that
the space ice?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness,
that was super awesome. I got to still finish. Oh, no, go ahead.
That was just painful to do because I didn't want to tell anybody about those cards. There's no way I can afford them at the current price, but there's just so few of them on eBay. It's like, I don't want someone else to get these. I want them someday.
Yeah. But yeah, like those the General Mills ones, the stickers, and there was the candy bar ones that they did for around Empire Strikes Back, where it's like they're oversized ones, and they were on like packages of bulk candy bars, like let's say like 5 or 10 of them, and they're underneath like where the cardboard was, where they have that. I think I have one of those.
We might have missed whatever that set was. That doesn't sound.
It's nuts. The Kellogg's, the 1984 Kellogg's ones, where they had like there was a card, and I think there was a sticker on top. So you peeled the sticker off, and it was a card underneath. And so you had a sticker and that. And in Canada they have separate versions of that, and so you can just go nuts. I found like there was the Phantom Menace. There was a Mexican version that they went in with Pepsi and did a whole series of, it's like 70 or 80 cards, where I think if you bought packs of Pepsi or whatnot, you got like a pack of like 3 cards, and some of the coolest checklists I've ever seen, because they were wide vision and they had a picture of the card on their checklist cards. I've only got a few of those, but I've got like a lot of the rest of the set, because at the time on eBay, like you're saying, this guy was selling a ton of these packs, and I was picking them up until I'm like, I'm getting too many dupes now, and it's really getting expensive to keep doing this. But yeah, some of those international ones, a lot of them, especially the 77s, printed in Argentina, Mexico, like you guys were talking about, where it was like, man, those kids I got railed because there's only 2 or 3, and they all look like hell. And I've got one of those, and I'm very happy I have one of those. The UK had different ones. Ireland had one, so the more you kind of pull back, the more you can find. But, I think probably the Grail one now would probably be finding like some of the, like a couple of those Galaxy sets that I know that are expensive. I wouldn't mind. I mean, who wouldn't want I tell you what I'm doing right now. I found at Celebration Anaheim an empty Return of the Jedi box. Not one of the return ones that have the big X that make it look kind of ugly. That those were ones that not sold, and they returned them back. But I somehow got the box, and it was folded out, and I had to actually go up to a quiet room. They actually had a quiet room in Anaheim, and I very carefully folded that thing back without ripping it. But I found it like pretty good price, and so I've been buying once in a while. I'll find a reasonable price pack of the Return of the Jedi Series 1, and my goal is to fill a box of it. kind of reverse engineer a sealed box.
Yeah.
And that would be nice. Eventually get like, if I ever got one of those cases like everybody gets, here's a complete box of Return of the Jedi, or at least one that looks like it was never purchased. But it's awesome. One of those, like, it'll take me a while. I've got about I'm halfway there, but it's a fun hobby where it's a fun hobby where you can attack all this in different ways. Yeah. And however you want to collect, whatever you want to collect, that's cool. I'm here to just, hopefully in the show, enable. Like, it's okay to collect and collect how you want, and you don't have to answer to anybody. You collect exactly how you want, and your collection's cool whether it has one card or thousands of cards. I one of these days I gotta audit my own collection, and I'm really afraid to do that.
Yeah, that's a scary proposition sometimes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What have I done?
This box, which now has a Rebel Base card sticker on it, is nice. Absolutely full of mess. I'm not saying you were endorsing the mess. I also wanted to talk about your swag packs. So we're gonna get out of here, but I think that's worth bringing up, and I'll put some images on the screen of those cards. But yeah, those are awesome, and it was a delight to get some of those in the mail. It seems like I don't know, just a super cool labor of love. If you want to talk about that at all.
It started with, and we were at like my friends from the Red 5 podcast network, Rogazka and whatnot. They were doing this thing, Scarif Con, because Rogazka does the Scarif podcast and some of the other Red 5 ones, and they would get together down at Alley Cat Comics. And the first one they did, I wasn't able to go to. It was really cold, so I'm kind of glad I didn't go to it. But they've done a few where it's like you went down there and then they'd have this table of swag, like everybody has. Like you go to a convention, there's swag, and I'm like, I saw some, the 501st cards, which I love, and I try to get, and I'm like, I should do a card. I'm a card podcast, and so I could never quite figure out, like, man, I just don't want my mug on just this card or 1,000 of them. And so the first one was sort of like a laminated, heavy cardstock, or just a one that I could put through printer paper with. And then I was like, I actually found a couple of places, Primo Print and Got Print, that you could get limited quantities of like 100 cards printed. And I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. So it becomes this scrapbook throughout the year of things that I've done or places I've gone to or just something that makes a cool card. And I go, this is something I can hand out. And whereas, I think when people hand out business cards, I'm not high on them, especially at cons, because they'll get tossed. But if I gave you something that looked like a trading card, or if I gave you a pack of them, and I probably print way too many more than I need to, but it was like, oh man, someone can open it and they get the thrill of opening a pack, and then they can see maybe a place they haven't been to or something. And it's fun. And then that became how close can I make this looking to like the cards without getting sued?
Right. Yeah, I think it says, please don't sue me on the back of the pack.
Thank you for providing that. But each year, and I started this a couple of years ago to catch up, I wanted to do in the order of the print run. So there, right now we're on series 4, and each one, blue, red, yellow, green, orange. Orange is the one I'm working on for next year. I'm printing them now. So each of them will look like the cards that came out in order. So he's holding up, a green series 4, and that was from Fan Expo Chicago, where Anthony Daniels, who, the way Fan Expo was laid out, you could actually walk past where they're autographing. It wasn't like way far away, and like he's right over there.
Yeah.
And at some point, he led this procession of 501st Rebel Legion Mando Marks, and we're outside. Ross Hollabin, a friend of mine, we're kind of waiting in another autograph line outside in the lobby of the Donald D. Stevens, and here comes Anthony Daniels marching with all these folks, and they're getting together a group picture, and like it was amazing because there's this crowd that's forming around this. It's like you've got the crowd of them trying to get their picture taken, and everybody around is going, this is nuts, because Anthony Daniels is like right there. And at one point, he's like maybe 20 feet away from him. Like, that's dope. So I was like, getting that together was like, that makes a great picture, and it's in a public place. And I'm like, you know what? You're in a public place. I can take your picture. But that makes a nice memory. Like the one we had Ewan McGregor at Celebration Anaheim.
Yeah, I saw that card. I was on the other side of the crowd somewhere over there.
And you're like, this is amazing. And thanks to, Frank and Amy Mulder for keeping that spot open, because they camped there all day. And all of a sudden there's Ewan, and it's just like that chanting. And I remember putting some of that in my Celebration podcast, and it's like, this was nuts. And he genuinely, you could feel he was just so happy with how things had turned out, even though he could say like his autograph session, I don't think he really cared that much about, but seeing all that love that, that the prequel kids never had a chance to lay on him was awesome. And you just felt kind of swept up. And as soon as I took that, I'm like, oh, this is going to go on a card for sure. I can't wait to print that. And so it's fun. And so, like through the year, I capture these images, and now the further I got into it, what makes a card, what makes a good card? There's ones where I've had to kind of like go, oh, that's a nice image, but I don't like where that shot, or if I would have turned my subject around, it would have made a more interesting card. So now, as we're getting into what I've got, almost like 37, because I'm in series 4, I'm printing series 5, and it's like you've got a lot of cards. So I'm like, I don't want to repeat myself a lot, or like what image do I want to get from this one? Or if I know that I'm meeting an artist like this year, like Jamie Consley, I want to get him on a card. And I knew exactly, when I got to go down to Charlotte, and I go, I need you in front of this, and I want to do that. And so as we get, hopefully each year of the podcast, if I keep doing this, it'll follow. Like we'll go into Empire Series 1, 2, and 3. We'll go into Jedi Series 1 and 2.
I want the wide visions.
The wide vision will be tricky, but I do have a Galaxy prototype that I sent off a demo. I found another print shop that does even smaller runs, and I was doing like instead of doing Galaxy, I do Rebel base card Universe in the style of that Galaxy. I'll throw that in Twitter so you can see it. But it has a back, and it's incredibly 90s. I wanted to put everything in there, but that allows me to do some of the artwork that I've kind of gotten back into, and this is about my level. You saw it on the cover of the pack, where like that's about as good as I'm getting. But if I just keep doing it, I can do it easier, and then I can do some digitally, and so I can maneuver that thing around. And so it's just a matter of just kind of creating something that's fun for somebody to open. Do I expect them to keep it? I don't know. It's a card, and but it's fun to kind of give away, and it makes some interesting swag. They're not cheap to put together, but I'm not losing my house on it either, and it's fun. Yeah. And so so it makes it interesting. And then one series I was able to some artists to do some sketch cards. I had my own stock.
That's awesome.
I found this linen card, and so Mikey Babinski and Daniel Riveron, and then another fella who I'm forgetting at the moment. I'm sorry. I had three guys that did special cards for me, and that was fun to randomly put into packs. And then some people got really cool sketches, and so I'm trying to think of stuff to put in this next one. I put in like Return of the Jedi cards in this latest one because it's the 40th anniversary of. So it's just, you can get some real cards in there, and you can have some fun. And it's like I said, it's a unique piece of swag. And there's in this community, not to draw this out any longer, there's so much awesome swag being made, stuff being sold, like people who are doing all kinds of great, Panda Bear or Left Coast Graphics or, Nerd Matters, or all these folks who are doing like Etsy stores and doing this amazing Star Wars stuff at a high level. And it's so much fun. Kara DJ, who's doing like Into Another World fanzine. And all these folks are just really, they're so passionate. They're awesome folks, and they're doing all this kind of great stuff. And I think at the end of the day, that means a lot more to me than a lot of like the toys that are mass produced or this, where I'm like, I don't have room for that. But you know what? I'm going to make a place for this stuff because this is custom made. And all these I kind of consider as one-on-ones, and they're fun, and they're the great people who are behind it. That's the thing I think that has been the most fun for me, is meeting all these folks, meeting folks like yourself that go, you know what, you could be somewhere. Like I've talked to folks like they don't live near a big city, or they don't have a con that's that far out, but it's like their online connections are just as important as, maybe they don't have a chance, maybe they work a job or they work overnight and they sleep during the day and they don't have a chance to go out and go to cons and things like that, but they're still passionate fans and they still like doing stuff, and those connections they make. And if they're fortunate enough to kind of like, oh, hey, you're cool. All right. This is a real person. It's not a bot. People become friends. And I've got folks in different chat groups that are just amazing folks. And it's so much fun because you can talk about, Star Wars and all this kind of stuff. And you feel like I'm a part of something, but I don't feel alone. I don't feel like, I'm disconnected and I didn't like that and I don't have anybody to talk to, so I'm just going to randomly go online and say, you guys suck. Like, no, you can have so much more fun if you just, find your tribe. You guys are my tribe, man.
Yeah.
That's what's cool about it.
It's been a great excuse to continue our Star Wars card habit as
it certainly
being able
has.
to talk about
our Star Wars card habit, and just being able to connect with one of my best pals in general. Something that we both really enjoy. And I will say it's been a pleasure getting to meet you. Before we let you go, I do want you to plug the podcast, where people can find you, any other locations that you want to share with our massive audience. Greg,
lots of folks here.
Huge. You're gonna feel the Cargo Bay bump coming through. So let the people know where you are.
Well, I mean, if we combine our audiences, we have a larger audience.
It's true.
You can find me on Instagram, X/Twitter, Threads, Facebook at Rebel Base Card, one word. The podcast you can find on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. If you look for the Rebel Base Card podcast, or like in my bios, I try to put a link to like the Spotify feed now, which is nice because Spotify bought out Anchor, and now it's just Spotify for podcasters. But you can listen to it that way. I should really use YouTube more, and I do have some YouTube videos up if you look at Rebel Base Card as well, but it's not as consistent. I did start a Substack. I try to branch out. It's just because this is not a job for us. You put out content when you can, but it's fun because these things, as long as you kind of keep doing it, then I don't feel like I'm going to burn out. I would rather be a resource, or if someone enjoys it, I'd rather do it longer. And if I can do it at something you can manage, I don't feel like I'm, forced to go, well, if I don't get to X level, forget it. I'm like, no, I enjoy I enjoy learning stuff. I enjoy talking and having folks on. We need to get you on like a proper, longer form interview because it's fun. And I think there's an audience, out there that enjoys hearing about that and goes, oh, I didn't know about these guys. Yeah, I'm on YouTube. Let's fire this thing up. Oh, this is great because now, idiot, you should be doing this. You're like, why don't you do this? And I'm like, you're right. You got a point. But you just try to find where people are and hopefully just be, a force for good and force for just positive, engagement into the hobby, whatever it is, whether it's Star Wars, whether it's card collecting, whatever, man. Just keep doing it. Enjoy it because, nothing lasts forever.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I couldn't disagree more. We started a Star Wars trading card podcast for the big subscribers and the big money.
For the bucks, baby.
No, of course not. Couldn't have said it better. So glad to have you on the show. Thank you for gracing the humble Cargo Bay with your presence, and we'll have links below for everything. And I guess that's it. BC, if you're ready to give us a schwomp.
Oh yeah. You'll love. I feel like the Doughboys, whenever it's embarrassing for Mike to do this in front of it,
Oh, I haven't made you. I haven't made you do this in front of a guest.
But yeah,
sorry,
I got it. No, we're good.
Wait, there's more.
There's more. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you ready, Adam? Okay.
I'm ready.
Shoom.
Perfect. Beautiful.
So what that was is the sound effect for when our cargo bay door closes on the video.